Okay, Ruth chapter 3. Get your phones or Bibles. Let's go to Ruth chapter 3. You guys remember what we taught, what I taught 2 weeks ago on Ruth chapter 2?
Yep.
Yeah. And so Ruth chapter 1 was about famine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ruth chapter 2 really is about the barley harvest, but we went over a little bit too about Ruth chapter 2 and safe people. And how Ruth really was a righteous woman. She dedicated herself to Naomi verbally, but she walked the walk in Ruth chapter 2. She's out there, she's doing hard work. She's doing laborious work in the farm. She's gleaning in the field. She's there from day till night. So she was actually a wonderful example of just a hard working woman in the midst of having some really hard times. We saw a little bit about Boaz and how Boaz entered her into a community right away with safe people, godly men, godly women. But the cool thing about Boaz from that record is you can see that he is both tough and he's tender. Mm-hmm. He's tough because he commands his men, don't you touch her, and they obey. He's tender with his interactions with her. And I think that's a good motif for people to see, particularly courting or looking towards the end of marriage or anything like that. Because a man particularly is supposed to be tough for his wife, but tender with his wife. So tough for her, tender with her, right? Oh, yeah. Yeah. I didn't say that it's easy. I'm saying that's what it should be. But we're going to get into Ruth chapter 3 today. But before we go there, why don't you go to 2 Chronicles chapter 3. Keep your finger or your bookmark digitally at Ruth chapter 3. We'll come right back there. But in 2 Chronicles chapter 3, would somebody like to read?
Sure.
Read verse 17. This is about the building of the temple.
2 Chronicles 3:17. He set up the pillars in front of the temple, one on the south, one on the north, and one on the south he called Jachin, and one on the north Boaz.
He called one of the pillars of the temple Boaz. It was referenced after Boaz. We're going to see why, because Boaz was a strong man, and he was a man that you could build something with. And so we're going to look at Ruth chapter 3. We're going to start, and we'll just go in a circle and read. So Gracie, would you like to read verses 1 and 2?
Of Ruth chapter 3?
Mm-hmm.
Ruth chapter 3. Then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said unto her, My daughter, shall I not seek rest for thee, that it may be well with thee? And now is not Boaz of your kindred, with whose maidens thou wast? Behold, he winnoweth barley tonight in the threshing floor.
Awesome. Okay, so this is where they're at. They're at the threshing floor. And I want to call this the moonlit threshing floor. Because it's actually kind of, if you can build it in your mind, it's actually a pretty cool spot. So the harvest has happened. The harvest takes about 8 weeks. And then at the end of the harvest, they go to the threshing floor. But the threshing floor is kind of like a work party. It's like, we've got all the harvest in, we've done all the hard work, and now all the men go to the threshing floor to remove the excess from the substance, from the quality stuff on the threshing floor, and then to also celebrate that they had a good harvest. And so, but what they do, the threshing floor is done at night. It's cooler weather temperatures, and it's also done at elevation. So the highest point in the village, everybody should be able to see it. And so it's a moonlit night at the highest point, and the men are threshing wheat at the threshing floor in the moonlight. And it's kind of a wonderful party thing for them, okay? And so that's how it happens thus far. Now, Naomi's hope has reawoken, She was the lady that was saying, the Lord hath afflicted me, his hand has gone out against me. But now she's like trying to turn into a mama matchmaker, which is absolutely what she's doing in chapter 3, okay? And she's got a reawakened hope. She's starting to see that all things work out for good with them that love God. But in verse 2 it says, he's going to winnow barley tonight at the threshing floor. And he's going to be there. He's going to sleep there as well, because he's going to want to defend it from anybody else who's trying to take it. Remember, they're in the middle of a famine, right? And the Lord has visited Bethlehem. And so they have abundance, but everybody else may not have abundance at this time. Okay? Now, but also you might not read it and you might not see it right off the bat, but a lot of time has passed. They came in at the beginning of the barley harvest, and then now it's the threshing floor, which happens at the end of the barley harvest. And what this means is that Boaz and Ruth has had time together. They've seen each other. She's been there gleaning. She's been there working. He's seen how she operates. She has seen how he operates. He's invited her to eat with them. She is one of them as far as the community and the group of the reapers and the harvesters. So there's time has passed here, right? But the thing is, the time, they haven't necessarily had alone time together, right? They've had group time where they've seen each other operate. And they've gotten to know each other in a group setting. And not just any group setting, it's a group of believers, a community of people who fear God, right? Remember, Boaz says to his whole team, "The Lord bless thee." They all say back, "The Lord bless thee." And so they're getting to know each other with reference to a group. And that's very different than today. See, there's safety and encouragement and accountability in the community of Christ. And at least there should be. Now, this is different than today's culture. Because today's culture, in an oversimplified version, is two people meet, one person they try to go alone, away from parents, away from other social events, one-on-one time, and then usually it happens that they start rushing physically, and then when they rush physically, they usually get on an overdose of passion without having the necessary building or experience or maturity to deal with the spiritual and emotional implications with being sexually involved. And this is common today. Now, some people haven't gone through this. I think it's a good thing. But most people have, I think. And that was definitely the case with myself in prior years. But this is the way that the world does it. And the world will teach you more on how to end a relationship than how to keep a relationship. I think we all know about, we probably all have friends, we all have been there ourselves maybe, that have seen these types of relationships take place, whether in other people or out of our own experience. And so, but that's not the way that Ruth and Naomi, or how Ruth and Boaz ended up kind of getting to know each other. They got to know each other within a group of believers, and the good thing about this is there's both an onus on Ruth and Boaz, but there's also an onus on the group of believers. We can actually take a lot of good practical insight from this. It means that we need to be good Christian friends. And that doesn't mean being legalistic, weirdo friends, because there's no perfect spouse out there. You want to find the perfect mate or the perfect person, you're going to meet them at the return. His name is Jesus Christ, okay? All right? And so, but we also are a family. We have to look out for each other and be the ones who are looking out for each other's best interest. And that goes within the realms of courtship too. So they did this a lot different than the way man does it today. In fact, I was reading some statistics about how the invention of the automobile in the 1930s changed courting into dating. Because beforehand, you had to go to the family's house. You had to meet with the family, mingle with the family, hang out with the family the whole time while getting to know them. And then, you know, there was kind of like you had to go through a scrutiny with all of them around. Whereas in 1930s, you grab them, pick them up, drive off to Makeout Canyon or wherever the people go to. And then from there, it just kind of changed the whole cultural outlook. Okay? All right. So Naomi's about to give Ruth some advice, and so Tiffy, why don't you read verses 3 through 5?
Wash thyself therefore, and anoint thee, and put thy raiment upon thee, and get thee down to the floor, but make not thyself known unto the man until he shall have done eating and drinking. And it shall be, when he lieth down, that thou shalt mark the place where he shall lie, and thou shalt go in and uncover his feet, and lay thee down, and he will tell thee what thou shalt do. And she said unto her, All that thou sayest unto me, I will do.
Awesome. Okay, so there's two ways to take this. And biblical commentaries are doing they usually go one of two ways in polar opposites. This is either the worst advice ever or something else is going on, all right? Because, you know, the only time that Boaz has ever seen Ruth is she's been in farming beggar mode, right? And so hair's up, she's pitted, sun parched, dirt under the fingernails, smells bad, she's sweaty. And so Naomi says, he's our kinsman, and this is one side of the commentary. He's our kinsman, you need to lock it down. So, Mrs. Moabite from your cultural background, get nice, put on your glass heels, walk over to there, and while he's sleeping on the threshing floor, sneak up to him, uncover his skirt, and then when he wakes up, say, whatever you wanted me to do, I'll do. All right? Now that sounds like the most terrible advice ever, right? Especially because this is kind of a work party for them. So they are eating and drinking. And so what mother out there is like, wait until he's done drinking and he's fallen asleep, make yourself all nice, lay next to him, uncover the skirt, which has some cultural meaning, uncover the skirt, and then say, hey, what do you want me to do? This is the most terrible, this could be the most terrible advice that a particular Naomi matchmaker mother could be saying if you're looking at it through that lens. I don't think that's the advice she's giving, okay? Because of a couple things. And it's really going to get confirmed in verse 9 when we get there, but you're just going to have to keep a couple things in your mind until we get there, okay? First of all, she says, wash, anoint, put raiment upon thee. And up until this point, obviously, she's been dirty, grungy, she's been working hard, she's been impressive. Boaz already said, the way you treat your mother-in-law, we all know it, and because of this, I'm favoring you. So she's impressive, but she's also dirty and sweaty and all those things, right? So obviously, it's probably a good idea, Naomi saying, wash yourself, anoint yourself, which means put on perfume or something that smells nice, put some nice clothes on, and then you're going to go up. And verse 4, it shall be when he lies down, thou shalt mark the place where he lies, thou shalt go in and uncover his feet, and lay thee down, and he will tell thee what thou shalt do. Right? Okay, so uncover his feet. So there's 4 things you need to remember here, okay? And we're going to confirm this later. It's wash thyself, anoint thyself, put raiment upon you, and uncover his feet, okay? Those are the 4 things you need to keep in mind, all right? These are very important, and we're going to confirm why later. But until then, let's just continue to read the record. Julie, you want to read verses 5 through 9?
5 through 9.
Actually, read 5 through 7 first.
5 through 7. And she replied, all that you say I will do. So she went down to the threshing floor and did just as her mother-in-law had commanded her. And when Boaz had eaten and drunk, and his heart was merry, he went to lie down at the end of the heap of the grain. Then she came softly and uncovered his feet and lay down.
Awesome. So she came softly. And so this idea of presenting yourself to them culturally is an act of great submission. It's an act of great humbleness and submission, of presenting yourself to somebody and laying down at their feet. Now, he's asleep, so he doesn't necessarily know what's going on. But the threshing floor was where the men worked. It was like the men's work party. It was like we did it, we made it to the end of the harvest. Now we're doing the easy stuff in the cool of the night. We're eating and drinking while we're working, and no women are allowed. Okay, so it's kind of against common etiquette for women to be on the threshing floor, right? But she's sneaking up while everybody's passed out after they've eaten and drinking. It's midnight. And she lays at his feet. You want to go ahead and read verses 8 and 9?
At midnight the man was startled and turned over, and behold, a woman lay at his feet. He said, who are you? And she answered, I am Ruth, your servant. Spread your wings over your servant, for you are a redeemer.
Awesome. Okay, that's perfect. Okay, so in verse 8, the word turn himself in the margin of mine, it says take hold on. So he is sleeping there to defend against the famine, right? And she is sneaking up on him. And so he wakes up in the dark, and the literal Hebrew, I have it in the margin of my Bible, it says, where is it? Let me read it to you, verse 8. It says, take hold upon. So he wakes up and just goes, boom, and just grabs her and goes, who are you? And she goes, I am Ruth, thy handmaid, meaning thy handservant. She's, once again, being very submissive. She's presenting herself in a very, very submissive way. And she says, spread therefore thy skirt over thy handmaid. It's skirt in KJV, it's wings in ESV and all the other translations, because it's the same word in Hebrew. Hebrews love word puns. And so the word skirt is also the word wings, which is why it's also symbolism. The uncovering of his skirt that Naomi was telling him to do, this is what it represents. It represents going under his wings. And we're going to see that this is actually a formal marriage proposal. And she says, spread therefore thy skirt or thy wings over thine handmaid, for thou art a near kinsman. Go to Ezekiel chapter 16. So, 4 things. Wash thyself, anoint thyself, clothe thyself, uncover his skirt, which really is the request for him to spread his skirt over her. Okay? And Ezekiel chapter 16, with those things in mind, Jessica, you want to read verses 8 through 10?
Yes. Ezekiel
16.
8 through 10.
Now this is God talking to Israel.
When I passed by you again and saw you, behold, you were at the age for love, and I spread the corner of my garment over you and covered your nakedness. I made my vow to you and entered into a covenant with you, declares the Lord God, and you became mine. Then I bathed you with water and washed off your blood from you and anointed you with oil. And I clothed you also with embroidered cloth and shone you with fine leather. I wrapped you in fine linen and covered you with silk. And I adorned you with ornaments and put bracelets on your wrists and a chain on your neck.
Now you can go to verse 13.
Okay. And I put a ring on your nose and earrings in your ears and a beautiful crown on your head. Thus you were adorned with gold and silver, and your clothing was of linen and silk and embroidered cloth. You ate fine flour and honey and oil. You grew exceedingly beautiful and advanced to royalty.
Awesome. So this is God's marriage proposal to Israel. And this is what he says. He says, I found you, and when I found you, you were at the time of love, meaning you were of age to enter into a marriage. And then he says, when I found you, what does it say in the ESV? It says, I put the corner of my garments over you, I think. That's the same phrase in the KJV and in the Hebrew as I spread my skirt over you. All right? So that's your thing where she's saying, please spread your skirt over me. Boaz, she's asking for a formal proposal of marriage. Please spread your skirt over me. Actually, even in Jewish tradition today, a lot of them, when they get married, there's a Jewish garb, and it has something called a talith, which is the corner of their garment, and during the marriage ceremony they will lift it and put it over the wife, and it symbolizes redemption and protection. And so that's what it means to spread the corner of the garment or spread the skirt over. And skirt is the literal word wings. It actually means both. It's mostly rendered wings, but it's a beautiful imagery of put me under protection of your wings. And so God entered into this marriage covenant with Israel. Even in verse 8, he said, I swear unto thee, and entered into a covenant, and that covenant was marriage with thee, and the Lord God, and thou becamest mine. Then I washed thee with water, and then I anointed thee with oil, and then I clothed thee. So the 4 things I told you to remember that Naomi told Ruth to do, right, was wash herself, anoint herself, clothe herself, and then uncover his skirt. And so this is why I think it's a formal proposal of marriage, because it lines up particularly with everything here in Ezekiel 16 that God did for Israel. And so go back to Ruth chapter 3. And so she comes, and she comes very humbly. She comes very submissively. And in one perspective, she could seemingly claim her right of a kinsman redeemer, because it was a law in Israel, right? But the law here is kind of fuzzy because she's a Moabitess. And the Moabitess is not supposed to enter into the congregation of Israel. But she converted to Judaism, which makes her a proselyte. But if Boaz wanted an easy out with the fuzziness of all the kind of stipulations of the law, he could. He could take that out. That would be available for him if he wanted to. But if he wants to actually take her, the only reason he would want to take her is purely because he would want to take her, because there's a lot of weird stipulations with the law. But let's see what happens. She does this to him. She washes herself, anoints herself, clothes herself, and asks him to spread his skirt over her, his wings over her. And he says, in verse 10 through 11, go ahead, Grace.
And he said, Blessed be thou of the Lord, my daughter, for thou hast showed more kindness in the latter end than at the beginning. Inasmuch as thou followedest
Yeah.
not young men, whether poor or rich. And now, my daughter, fear not. I will do to thee all that thou requirest.
Yeah.
For all the city of my people doth know that thou art a virtuous woman.
Awesome. Okay. So, in verse 10, he says, you have shown me much kindness, because she's probably beautiful. And but she's not going after any of the young men, whether they're poor or rich or whatever. And he never looked at her that way. He also could have placed him forward as saying, I'm the kinsman redeemer. So, legally, legally I have some priority here, right? He could have done that, but there's no indication that he ever did that. And so there's a good point here. And the point is, he wasn't going to try and be her kinsman redeemer unless she wanted it. He wasn't going to go and try to push that envelope. He was not going to try and do that. And he says, he's older than her. I think we talked a little bit about this last time. At that culture, it wasn't uncommon to marry at age 13. She was in Moab with Naomi and the family for 10 years. So she got married at 13, 10 years later, she's 23. We'll say maybe she got married at 15, 16. So she's anywhere in her upper 20s, approximately. But a full-fledged adult in the Hebrew culture is somebody who's over the age of 30. So he's over the age of 30. We don't necessarily know by how much, but he's not elderly, because there's a point to pass where you become an old gray-haired man too. And he's not referenced there as any of those things. But this is an indication of something. That Ruth coveted character rather than personality. And Boaz coveted character rather than personality. And God covets character rather than personality. Having personality is great. Be funny, be cool, be quiet, whatever. Personalities are fine, those are nice. But character is what is important. And character is what Ruth and Boaz both exemplify in spades. Ruth is in a hard one. She's poor. She's a foreigner. Moab is known for whoredom. She had everything wrong with her, but she's hardworking. She finds grace. She chases after God. She tells Naomi, your God is my God. When she makes it a stand, and she makes a stand, she lives up to it. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard, because it's not easy. She's not putting herself in a way to try and, buy her own security by putting herself, physically in any way, which is what Moabites were known for. And so, but Boaz is not doing anything that seems crass or crude either. And so that's why I also brought up the beginning intro of how this could be really bad advice if you don't necessarily know. Ezekiel 16 or the culture or the time, it could just look like Naomi saying, we're still homeless, we got an inn, you need to lock this down, Ruth. It could look like that, but it's not like that. She's doing it the right way, and Boaz is doing it the right way. And look in verse 11, it says, now my daughter, fear not, I will do to thee all that thou requirest, for all the city of my people doth know that thou art a what? Virtuous woman. So the Proverbs 31 type of woman, Proverbs 31 has the virtuous woman. If you want to see a living example of that in action in a story in the Bible, Ruth is a wonderful example. In fact, she's called the virtuous woman. And the cool thing about the word virtuous woman, I think you girls actually might know this because you're all women, but it's also, that word virtuous is the word kayil, which is the same word for mighty man of valor. It's just the female version. All right, so what this is a story about how God gets a mighty man of valor and puts him together with a virtuous woman, or a mighty woman of valor, you might say. All right, and so this is a beautiful story about how God is working these two things together. All right, Tiffy, you want to read verses 12 and 13?
Sure. And now it is true that I am thy near kinsman, howbeit there is a kinsman nearer than I. Tarry this night, and it shall be in the morning, that if he will perform unto thee the part of the kinsman, well, let him do the kinsman part. But if you will not do the part of a kinsman to thee, then will I do the part of a kinsman to thee. As the Lord liveth, lie down until the morning.
Awesome. Okay, so this is a plot twist because Boaz likes her. She likes Boaz, right? But he is a kinsman redeemer, but he's not the nearest kinsman. And the nearest kinsman by law gets priority. It has to be the nearest kinsman. So he says, I want to do, nearest kinsman gets dibs, right? And so he says, I want to do it, and I will do it. But what does he say in verse 13? He says, let him do the kinsman part. But if he will not do the part of a kinsman to thee, then will I do the part of a kinsman to thee. As the Lord lives, lie down until morning. And so he's saying, I like you, I love you, I want you, but I'm not going to cut corners. I'm not going to compromise on God's word. That's what he's saying. The word given to him at that time, he is putting God first, even to the point where this woman that he likes, that he wants to take the part of, he's not going to break the law in order to do it. So he's not going to cut corners. He's not going to compromise. He's going to do it righteously before God by doing it God's way. Right? So he's a great leader and a good man, and he truly loves God first and foremost. And by that, he is able to actually lead in this situation righteously. He will not compromise on the word given to him in his day. And that is a perfect example of Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ, redeemed the church, but he didn't cut corners. He had to fulfill the law. It says, in the New Testament, it says, I don't come to abolish the law, I come to fulfill it, right? And so he fulfills it. The way he gets it out of the way, he's going to do it God's way. And that's exactly what Jesus Christ did for us. And he tells her to lie down until the morning. And Julie, why don't you go ahead and read verse 14 and 15.
So she lay at his feet until the morning, but arose before one could recognize another. And he said, Let it not be known that the woman came to the threshing floor. And he said, Bring the garment you are wearing and hold it out. So she held it out, and he measured out 6 measures of barley and put it on her.
Awesome. Okay.
And went to the city.
So this is interesting. And this is actually good to know. Because Boaz any carnal man had a great opportunity. Or seemingly thought they would have a great opportunity, right? Eating, drinking, partying, threshing floor. It's payday. Affluence, wakes up in the middle of the night, girl standing right there, and he doesn't. But what does Boaz not do? Boaz doesn't go, well, get on up here, girl. Why don't you come on up? He doesn't do that. He doesn't do that. He says, wow, thank you. I would love to do that. I'm not going to cut corners. There's a nearer kinsman. He's in his right mind, and he's doing it the right way. He's not taking advantage of a situation that really, if you look at it, it seems like it could be really easy to take advantage of. I mean, if he wanted to, he had all the space in the world to be unrighteous at any one of these crossroads. But he doesn't do it. Not once does he do it. He brings in the law. He brings in the nearest kinsman. Why? Because he loves God first. He loves God first, and that's what makes him a good leader. And she is listening to wise counsel from her mother. And the thing is, they are banking on Boaz's righteousness, because giving anybody this type of advice seems odd, right? The advice of doll yourself up, uncover the skirt, and then he's going to tell you what you need to do. Really, if you wanted to do that, advice coming out of anybody would sound like hard advice to swallow, right? It seems like that could be taken any way, unless the person that you're dealing with has a very high regard for righteousness. And that person was really wonderful. It's nighttime. The moonlight is out. It's midnight, They're at the top of the threshing floor. This could be seen as a romantic visage, She's all nice. She smells pretty. She looks gorgeous. So this is the first time he's probably ever seen her like this. He's been drinking, But he's a good man. And then he says to her, let it not be known that a woman came unto the floor. Obviously, this is unseemly for the time. It's unseemly for the time for the woman to be on the threshing floor. But also what he wanted to do here is he had her lay there next to him all night, which is kind of really beautiful too. Like they don't do anything, but it's like, oh, well, let's try to figure this out. But for tonight, just lay next to me. And then he wakes up before anybody can know. And he says, okay, you need to get out of here before anybody sees. And I think this is, I believe that he is trying to protect her honor. Because in verse 11, you already heard that everybody knows her to be a virtuous woman. And so, women aren't supposed to be on the threshing floor, and all of a sudden, farmer beggar mode Ruth is all dolled up on the threshing floor with the boss, right? And so this could look pretty weird. This could look underhanded. And so what he says is, before anybody is awake, go and leave, because I don't want... Well, first of all, she didn't want her to leave at midnight because they're in the middle of a famine on the threshing floor. Who knows if enemies are out there? And if she's going to go by herself, she could get assaulted. Didn't want to go lying with any other dude because they've been eating and drinking too. So he's like, no, you stay here, lie here. In the morning, before anybody can see, you're going to go out there because I want to protect your reputation. Also, I think he doesn't want the other kinsman redeemer to know what's going on. So that maybe he's got a better hand to play when that comes up in chapter 4. And so those are some of my thoughts on the record, but he's a good guy. He's a good guy. And after kind of seeing these interactions, the choices that he's making, even before getting through chapter 4, you can kind of start seeing, this is probably why a temple pillar was named after this man. All right. Where was I? Verse
16.
Okay, cool. Oh, he also gives her 6 measures of barley. So this is good. Because he's a proper gentleman. And as a proper gentleman, Boaz did not want to send Ruth home empty-handed. Okay?
It's a snack for Henry.
Yep. That's exactly what it is. So not having chocolates at the time, he gives her 6 measures of grain. Now, I think in the New King James Version, it says 6 ephahs of grain. I think that's 100% incorrect, because 6 ephahs of grain would be 36 gallons of grain. And he couldn't put that in her dress or her shawl or her apron. But 6 measures, it's a lot. He sends her home to Naomi, saying, here, take this. And remember, this is the prime stuff now. This is threshing floor stuff. It's like better than what's gleaned. It's better than the stuff that they accidentally threw on the ground while they were harvesting, This is the prime stuff. He's giving it to her, 6 measures. Go take this home to your mother-in-law. All right? And who read last?
Me?
Julie? Me? Julie. What? Do you want me to read? Oh, Jessica? Okay.
Jessica, why don't you read verse 16 through 18?
And when she came to her mother-in-law, she said, how did you fare, my daughter? And she told her all the things the man had done for her, saying, these 6 measures of barley he given to me, for he said to me, you must not go back empty-handed to your mother-in-law. So she replied, wait, my daughter, until you learn how the matter turns out, for this man will not rest, but will settle the matter today.
Awesome. So Ruth, in verse 4, it has Naomi's instructing Ruth to go to Boaz, lay down, and he's going to tell you what you shall do. Now this seems like potentially catastrophic advice, but I believe that Naomi and Ruth were banking on what kind of man they had come to know him as. A good man, a godly man, one to whom Ruth could confidently submit. And all of her interactions with him on the threshing floor, every single one, even the words she used, thy handmaid, I'm your handmaid, laying down at his feet, uncovering his skirt, were all culturally very big acts of humility and submission to him culturally. And it's really beautiful how she interacts with him, and then really beautiful how he interacts with her back, right? They're both trying to do this the right way, as best as they know how. And in the marriage relationship, many husbands wish they had a wife who submitted to them the way that Ruth is being told here. But do they provide the kind of godly leadership, care, and concern that Boaz showed to Ruth and others? In the marriage relationship, many wives wish they had a husband who loved, cared, and treated them the way Boaz did towards Ruth. But do they show the same kind of humble submission and respect Ruth showed Boaz? In verse 16 through 18, as it draws to a close, Naomi is in full matchmaker mode. She knows. Sit still, my daughter, until thou know how the matter will fall. For this man will not be in rest until he have finished the thing this day. She knows when a man is on a mission, she's going to get it done, right? And so she sees it. She's seen this whole thing. You know, time has developed. It's probably been about 8 to 10 weeks because of the harvest. She sees Ruth coming back with trinkets and gleaning. Oh, just this field. Stay in this field. And then bringing leftovers from the table of Boaz, which is good food. Seeing the accidental, the purposeful accidental sheaves left on the ground. And she sees all this happening, and she's like, okay. All right. Hey, Ruth, it's the threshing floor. Now, what this means is, because after the threshing floor, the harvest is done. Everybody leaves, goes back to their own homes. And everybody could live in different places, particularly Boaz. So she might be thinking, baby, this is our last chance. You got to go over there. You got to lock this down. But even if that is her intent, her counsel is wise. Wash thyself, anoint thyself, clothe thyself, which that's just good understanding and insight of understanding male behavior. She smells nice. She looks nice. Men like that. Men like, right? Men like women that smell nice, who look nice, took a shower. We love it when women take showers. But there's other cultural imperatives there, right? It's about a marriage proposal. She brings in the marriage proposal. She's humble. She's submissive. Boaz really kind of is in a test here, and so is Ruth. Because there are many instances, and the stage is set for many instances for them to try and be tempted to do one thing out of order, if you get what I'm saying, right? Rush too physically too much, or do one thing, or I've been drinking and everybody else is asleep and blah, 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 but they don't do any of that. They just stay there and romantically sleep next to each other on the threshing floor, get up, he loads her up with 6 measures of barley, sends her up to Mama. Mama sees her coming back with gift in hand, 6 measures of barley, and she knows, I just sent you to propose. So if you come back with nothing, that's a bad thing. If you come back with 6 measures, and if it's ephah, 36 gallons of freaking grain, which it's not, can't be, she wouldn't be.
She can't carry that.
She can't carry that. But it's a lot of grain, 6 measures. If she gets enough, Mama's thinking, yes, that means this is good news. And this guy is not going to rest until this matter is done with. So we have moved on and closed the threshing floor episode. You got a couple plot twists. Plot twist is there's a nearer kinsman. Legally, it's his right if he wants to, and Boaz, seeing as how righteous he is already, he will step aside if this man does this, seeing his kind of character. So what's going to happen? Is it all going to fail? The threshing floor episode has ended, but what will happen with the nearer kinsman? You'll have to come back next week to find out. Or you can just read. But you should come back next week to find out. That's what we have so far. All right? Yeah.
That's better than TV.
Yay. A
Oh!
little bit of drama.
Plot twist. What's that clip? Did you guys understand?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Beth watched most of it,
Yay.
and
Yes,
Shane
that's-
watched the last 15 minutes of it. And then Anna
How do you stop this?
from Portugal. Oh, it doesn't matter. I don't
Anna Cavallo?
No, ours. She's from Portugal.
Okay.
That one watched it.
Old or young? Because they're both Anna.
Old.
So Jessica, you're gonna put the whole series on YouTube?
Yup.
Yay!
Because I know Mom was asking. Or if you were there.
A lot of drama, or as Dad would call it, mitote.